In this week's video, I wanted to share 5 negative thought patterns that kept me broke for such a long time and how I started to overcome those. Let's go ahead and get started. First of all, just in case you're new here, my name is Leisha, and on my channel, I'm documenting my leveling up journey. So I discuss things that I'm working on in relation to femininity, becoming an elegant woman, and also becoming a wealthy woman, being able to build generational wealth together with my husband. So if you have not yet subscribed and you would like to follow along with my journey, please do. I would love to see you every single week right here. I think that it's very important if you are working on leveling up to get rid or work on getting rid of your negative thought patterns, especially thought patterns that may be keeping you broke, keeping you from taking action, and that sort of thing. For me, I started to reflect on these over the past week or so because we are starting to make some moves with our real estate investing journey. And for my long-term plans, I know that I have got to make sure that these thought patterns that have been very strong in the past do not show back up, because this is very new territory for us. We are going to be working on starting with some big renovations to our current home in order to continue building the value of our home. And for that, I know that it's going to be something that, again, is just totally brand new. So I'm not going to totally go into all of the details of home renovations. This is not going to turn into a home renovating channel at all. But I just wanted to give you sort of a real life circumstance that we are going to be going through so that you can understand why what I'm about to share with you is important. And also for you, no matter what your goal is, if you are working on bringing in more income, you're working on investing, and you're working on building wealth like we are, just generally, you can't have these negative thought patterns about money and wealth in general. And thankfully, somehow I was exposed to the awareness that these were thoughts that I needed to work on improving. So I'm going to share those with you, and I'll also share with you how I worked on those. What are the practical things that I did? And I can't go into really deep detail on those things, but hopefully you'll find some action points that you can take out of me sharing my story. So let's go ahead and dive into the first one. The first thought pattern that had a really deep hold on me for such a long time, and this is something that came from my childhood, is that I am not good with numbers. When I was younger and growing up all throughout school, I did not excel in the mathematics department whatsoever, and I only had my checking and savings account, but never really checked them, never really put a lot of effort into understanding how money worked, or really at all wanted to deal with math and numbers. As my goals in life started to shift, I realized that building wealth is really a numbers game. It's a numbers game for the most part. There's a lot of mindset involved and a lot of actions you need to take, but the actions you need to take will reflect on the numbers that you need to be seeing in your accounts and on your net worth statement, right? So the new thought pattern that I ultimately have been working on around my old one is that I have the power to become good with numbers. So that's what I work on believing about myself, instead of believing that I am not good with numbers. We can totally shift that into something that's more positive and inspires us to take more action. Maybe you can start with a book that teaches you just about personal finance. One of the books that I actually recommend is I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. I've talked about that book a lot, and you can find any of the books that I mentioned on my kit.co page, which is linked in the description below. The second negative thought pattern that I had, which kept me broke, was that money is a limited resource. This one can be very deeply ingrained in you if you came from a family that was not wealthy and that always seemed to be struggling for money, right? Because if you grew up seeing that money was not there and was not abundant in your life, then that translates to your thought patterns, and it can be very deeply ingrained. So that was the case for me. The way that I reframed that was I really started to look for examples that showed me that money was not a limited resource. So in actuality, there is a lot of money circulating the world, a lot more than you realize, that is there for you to go out there and get, right? Go out there and work for it, create value in exchange for it, those sorts of things. So I started to think more along the lines of, if I needed money at some point, all I had to do was think, okay, well, how can I acquire that money? How can I acquire that income? And thinking like that versus the other direction, which was that I will never be able to recoup this money. I will lose this money and never get it back. That really started to inspire me to take more actions and be more confident in my efforts to grow my income, look for better jobs, to start side hustles even. So you'll see that it starts to open up yourself to a lot more versus thinking in a scarcity mindset. Another thing that I did that was very practical is I would take dollar bills and I would place them around my home so that I would visually see money throughout my home and start to become more comfortable with the idea that money was around me. It was not scarce, and that helped me actually more than you would think. It sounds silly, but it really did help a lot. The third negative thought pattern about money that was keeping me broke is that building wealth is too hard for me. So when you put yourself in that box that you are not as smart or you have to work harder than everyone else, you tell yourself that. It may or may not be true, but if you tell yourself that, then the way that your mind perceives that is going to be pushing you towards that inaction, which is not where you want to be going at all. It's almost the why bother sort of mindset. When you think that something's too hard and you get really overwhelmed with it, this even happens to us with leveling up, right? You think it's too hard for you, there's too many things standing in the way, then why bother, right? You can be perfectly happy and content as you are without changing anything. But, maybe at the end of the day, that's not really what's fulfilling or purposeful for you. So instead, I had to work on this and look at it in a way that I, again, found examples that there were some achievable plans that I could put together in order to build wealth. I had to go out there and learn, okay, what does it really take to build wealth? Is it really all about just grinding every single day and running yourself into the ground? Or is there some sort of a plan that I can put together that will allow me to slowly get up the mountain to my goal, right? What is your goal in the first place? It may not be everyone's goal to build a $10 million net worth. Maybe you just want to start at 1 million, something like that. So think about it that way. Think about the plan, understanding how did these other people do it? What did they do? I love to read autobiographies or biographies. I love to watch stories on YouTube of people who achieved a lot of success and built their own wealth. I like to see real life examples of how it's possible. The important thing about taking that approach, though, is not to nitpick out what makes them different from you and why they may have had an easier time achieving wealth than you would. You have to look and see what are some of the similarities that I have with this person, or what are some strengths that I might even have over this person that would allow me to achieve and build my wealth. So that is how you would reframe that thought, and something that I just practically did in order to start to realize building wealth is not too difficult for me. It is totally achievable. So the fourth thought, this is a recurring thought pattern for me, and it's that XYZ will prevent me from building wealth. It can be anything. It can be that I live in this town, so I cannot build wealth. It can be that I look a certain way, so I cannot build wealth. So that is a very dangerous way to think, and I have to catch myself all the time with that, because especially in this day of social media and looking around us at what other people have compared to what we don't, that again puts you into a state of lack and puts you into a mindset that will prevent you from taking further actions. And it really is a vicious cycle. So the way that I started to break it is, again, I limit what I see. I limit what I consume as far as content. And to be honest, this is why I take frequent social media breaks, is because I have to be very careful with what I allow myself to compare myself to. because it's very easy for me to point something out and say, she has this going on for herself. She might already have the rich husband, right? And so that's why I will not be able to build my wealth, is because I have to work together with my husband. We are not currently elite status and able to easily build our wealth. You could also look at, your family. You might look around at your family not being wealthy, not being from a wealthy family, and say, that's why I'll never be rich. So be really careful. You have to first identify these things, which can be scary and hard to do for some of us. To admit it is what I'm referring to. But once you can identify those things and become very aware of them, replace them again with maybe stories or examples of people who had XYZ that you're dealing with and still built their own wealth, that had these challenges. It's very easy to put the blame on something for our lack of taking action and our lack of confidence and belief in ourselves to achieve that goal. Fifth one that I'm going to mention, and this is the last one, I'm not quite struggling with this one as much as I did when I was a lot younger. I will say this was very prevalent for me when I first graduated from university with my 2 bachelor's degrees. It's that I am entitled to wealth. No one is really entitled to wealth. I think, of course, there's some people who are born into it, but there are examples of those that are born into it and squander it away and lose their wealth, right? So it's not smart, I think, to think of yourself as being entitled to this wealthy lifestyle or being able to live an elite lifestyle. I think that I dealt with this a lot more when I was younger, just out of being very naive and not knowing the real value of a dollar, and having to deal with the constantly changing world. I think that as you learn and gather more experience and you do take some actions, you have to be very open and willing to fail. You have to also realize that you have more power and control over your life than you think. Your decisions are what allows you to achieve your goals or not. They add up every single day. No one's going to hand you this wealthy life and this huge net worth just because you exist. Although I believe that we're all deserving of the life that we want to live, and we're all deserving of being happy and content, right? I think that is something that I would love to see everyone in the world live with and have, is just a happy life and be fulfilled. But again, it's not going to be given to you. You can't always rely on someone to take care of everything that you want, right? You have to come to understand that there is a degree, even for those of us that are married, there's a degree of your own personal responsibility and ownership that you need to take towards what you want out of life. You can't always just let someone else do it for you or expect them to do it for you. And to be honest, that was me when I was just graduating from college. I thought that because I had my 2 bachelor's degrees, I deserved a job, and I deserved a good one, right? You've got to be able to put in the work, and you've got to be able to build the skills and offer the value to the world. So for me, that about sums everything up that I wanted to share with you about the thoughts that I'm working on personally keeping in check. There are a lot of other limiting beliefs that keep people broke when it comes to money, and it can be different based on your circumstances, based on where you live, based on your family. There are so many factors, but it's really, really important to take the time, sit down, get your journal out, and identify what are my limiting beliefs around money that are keeping me broke, are keeping me from taking action towards building the wealth that I want to build so I can live the beautiful life that I dream of and I desire. If you want to share one of your limiting beliefs with me down in the comments below, I would love to hear that. Maybe even I can give you some advice on how I would reframe that and start to work on it. That would be really neat to connect with you there. And as always, you can request to follow my Instagram at Leisha Leveling Up. please send me a DM, just a really quick DM if you can, so that I know you're not a bot or a spam account. I do share some more personal things on that account from time to time, and I try to monitor that as closely as I can. Again, thank you for watching. If you would like to catch up on one of these videos that are also related to money and other financial topics, I will leave them here on the screen, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.